guys, I'm Mary and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing the end of the year tag. So the first question is, are there any books you started this year that you need to finish? And other than just like the obvious answer of the ones I'm currently reading, I do have one that's kind of been on my currently reading for a couple weeks now, and that is Love and Color by Bolu Babalola, and I definitely want to finish this before the end of the year. So this has been kind of lingering on my currently reading, not because I'm not enjoying it, because I am, but just because it is a collection of short stories. And I discovered 2 years ago when I read a short story collection, just like back to front as if it was a novel, that reading it that way doesn't work for me, and I need to just read them more scattered, kind of like as I'm in the mood in between books. And so for that reason, I have been working on this one for a few weeks now, and I'm about halfway, so making progress on it, but there's 13 stories in here, and I've read the first 7, and I just want to make sure I finish it before the new year, just because I don't want it sitting on my bedside table for just months and months and months. I just do want to get through it in a reasonable amount of time. So yeah, this is the one that I definitely want to finish before the end of the year. Next question is, do you have an autumnal book to transition into the end of the year? And no, like I know a lot, hear people talk about how certain genres or subgenres or books they really like to read in certain seasons, like X books make them think of this season. I just like don't think that way. Like I don't have wintry books, or like wintry books I don't necessarily try to read in the winter. Like there aren't certain books I'd like to read in the summer kind of deal. So I don't have books that I specifically read in the fall. I guess I just don't think of books that way, so I don't do that. So I don't have a suggestion here because I don't have one. Next question, is there a new release you're still waiting for? And yes, many. So I have pages in my book journal where I write down the new releases each month, and so like I counted up, and I have between November and December, I have 18 on that list. So I chose 2, one from each month. So wasn't just going to read through all 18. So the first one is A Restless Truth by Freya Marsk. This is the sequel to A Marvelous Light, which I really enjoyed and read last year. So I'm excited to read the sequel. It is a historical fantasy with romance, and it follows the sister of one of the main characters in the first book. And this one takes place on a boat. I'm pretty into that, so I'm pretty excited for this one. And then and this comes out on November 1st. And then the December new release I chose is A Fire Endless by Rebecca Ross. This is the sequel to River Enchanted, which I read a few months ago and really quite enjoyed. And again, I'm just excited to continue in the series, or in this case, I believe this is the last book of the series, so finish the series off. This is also a historical fantasy, and I'm just excited to continue this story. And that one comes out on December 6th. Fourth question, what are 3 books you want to read before the end of the year? So for this one, I decided to set myself arbitrary guidelines for how to pick 3 books, because there's like more than 3 books I want to read between the end of the year, but I said I'm going to choose 3 books that are not obligation reads, like book clubs or books or arcs, and I'm just going to choose 3. And I'm choosing 3 that are not new releases that I'm still waiting on to release, just 3 that I already own, that have been on my TBR shelf for several months or more that I want to make sure I get off that TBR shelf this year. The first one of those is Holy Sister by Mark Lawrence. This is the 3rd and last book in the Book of the Ancestor series. And after reading the first book last year and feeling kind of, it was fine about it, I read the 2nd book earlier this year and loved it. So I definitely want to get to Holy Sister both soonish, so I don't forget everything from the first 2. Also, in hopes that I love this one as well, and to finish another series on my series list. The next one is The Mortal Word by Genevieve Cogman. This is the 5th? I think it's the 5th. Yeah, it's the 5th book in the Invisible Library series, and it's not the last book in the series, but I want to just keep chugging along on this series. I like to kind of read these every few months, pick up one, and kind of like a nice, shorter, little fun adventure story to slot in, and I'd like to read this one before the end of the year just to kind of keep moving on the series more than anything, and then continue on, and hopefully be able to finish the series next year. I think I only have 3 books after this one, so yeah, hopefully if I can get one done this year, it'll be pretty reasonable to kind of finish the series next year without trying to like stuff it in. And the last one is Half Sick of Shadows by Laura Sebastian. So this is one that I was excited about, and then I heard kind of meh reviews, so I just like didn't pick up for a long time, and now I'm like, I feel like I'm pretty far enough removed from like the initial reactions I saw that I'm like, I'm interested again. But I also put this on this list specifically because this is my oldest book of the month book I have on my shelf. Well, technically, I guess Love and Color is older, but I'm already in the middle of that one. So oldest one I haven't started yet. And I am not great at like reading my book of the month I get it. So I definitely have kind of a little bit of a log of them. But the one kind of rule I'm trying to do is to not go into 2023 with any 2021 book of the month books left on my TBR. So when I get through this one, the ones I had left were all ones I got this year. So trying to, even if I can't keep up month to month, trying not to just let books on that sit unread from that for like a long time. So I want to get this one off of there. The fifth question is there a book you think could still shock you and become your favorite book of the year? I know everyone who does this video always comments on kind of how odd this question is, because how do you take a book that you don't predict will be a favorite and then predict that actually it will maybe be a favorite? Like it's kind of odd, but I figured the best way to answer this was to look at all the books that I know for sure I will be reading the rest of the year, so like all my obligation reads, and choose which of those I think would be the most shocking if it were a favorite. And so for obligation reads, I'm looking at the arcs I have left for this year, some book club books I have for this year, as well as a kind of small little end of the year TBR I wrote. So like self-obligated reads on those that I want to get through, and chose which one would I would be most shocked if it were a favorite. And it's a book club read, which makes sense, I guess, because when I go into books, I usually go into a book expecting it to be a 4-star. Occasionally go into a book expecting it to be a 5-star if it's like in the middle of a series I love, but usually just go expecting a 4-star. And so the most likely time I would go into a book not expecting it to be 4 or higher would be a book club book, because I'll just read our picks every month regardless of how excited I am. So sometimes we pick ones I'm not particularly excited about. And so the book club book that fits in this case is Trick by Natalia Jaster. So this is billed as a new adult fantasy romance, and the summary kind of sounds like it's there's this like court. Our main character, who may or may not be a princess, lives at, and there's this court jester who like rules the court unofficially, and she kind of ends up under his spell or his command or something, and he has some kind of dastardly secret, something like that. I'm gonna be honest, the synopsis is written in first person, which is absolutely my least favorite way to read a romance book synopsis. Well, so the reason I chose this one, so this book kind of feels like the kind of new adult fantasy romance that you would get as a rec, as like, if you liked From Blood and Ash, read this, or if you liked Gil by Raymond Kennedy, read this. And so those series for me, I always start out liking and then they go downhill. And because this feels like a similar type of book, I'm not expecting to not like it, because again, both of those series, I liked the first books in those series, and this is the first book, so I still like it. But none of those series, like those kinds of books, are ever favorites for me. I find that while I love fantasy with kind of B-plot romances, and I love romance, fantasy romance doesn't hit as well for me. So this is the one that, again, not expecting to dislike it, but would be shocked if it was a favorite, just based on my experience with similar vibes of books. But we'll see. Maybe it will shock. You know, again, that's the whole point of the question, right? Maybe it will be shocking and I will just love it. It'll be a favorite, but we'll see. And the last question is, have you already started making reading plans for next year? And yes, because I have several, I think 7 2023 arcs, so at minimum, those are I'll be reading next year. And so like I'll read through the ones I have because it's not a long list. So ones I'm definitely reading next year is The Daughter of Izdahar by Hadir Elspy, Georgie All Along by Kate Claiborne, Behind the Scenes by Corelia Stets Waters, Take the Lead by Alexis Daria, The Foxglove King by Hannah Witten, The Witch and the Vampire by Francesca Flores, and Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. So yeah, at this point, those are the only ones I'm like definitely reading next year as far as plans as those arcs. I have things I want to read, but those are the only ones I would consider I am 100% reading next year kind of deal. So that is the end of the year tag. If you have any comments on any of the books I mentioned or your own answers to any of the questions, let me know in the comments, and I will see you in my next video.